Welcome to Life Notes. I'm your host, Paulette Payne. We bring you a very special edition of Life Notes today. We'll talk exclusively about the CCRTD, or the Center for Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development, who sponsors Life Notes. We are joined today by Dr. Shafiq Khan, who is the director of the program, Dr. Carlton Brown, who's president of Clark Atlanta University, and Mr. Tommy Dortch, who is a Board of Trustees member. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Good to be here.
So we're talking about the Center for Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development, and of course, prostate cancer, and what this organization means to the local community and the international cancer communities. Dr. Khan, can you talk to us a little bit about the CCRTD and what it means for CAU?
Yeah, before I start that, let me thank my guests here, and Dr. Carlton Brown especially. For the last 6-7 years, he has been the greatest supporter of the CCRTD, and really without your support, we wouldn't have succeeded the way we did. And I know you're leaving us soon, but we will never forget that, your support. And also, Mr. Dortch, I'm really grateful for you to come on this show. Now, the center was, started long before I came, but in 2004, we decided that we will entirely focus on the problem of prostate cancer, and especially in the African American community. So we've been building this center for the last 10 years, strictly focused on that. And we have basic research, we have training for our students and postdocs and junior faculty, and we have a very active community outreach program. Of course, this is part of that.
And so why is it important for this department, this center, to be housed at Clark Atlanta University, a historically black college?
Well, if you look at the prostate cancer and its incidence and mortality, African Americans have the highest rate of both incidence and mortality because of this disease in the world. And it's logical for an HBCU, and especially, and the other fact is that prostate cancer kills more people in the south of United States, urban regions, than anywhere else in the world. So it's logical for us to be where we are.
And just to piggyback off of that, Dr. Khan, it's important certainly because of the demographic that prostate cancer impacts, and it's also important because your students are being trained to be experts in the industry. How are you preparing your students to do that?
Well, we train students from very beginning, from the undergraduate level, and then of course we have master's program, we have a PhD program. So, for example, in the last 3 years, we have graduated 10 PhDs, and we have trained at least 70 undergraduate students in the last 5 to 6 years who have gone through our lab. So, even if they don't become a scientist, at least they have an exposure to research. But the PhD students we train, they go on and they stay in research.
And so not only are you grooming professionals, you're also extending that knowledge base out into the community. As we heard, Life Notes is a benefactor from the support of the CCRTD. What are some other community outreach programs the center does?
Well, we do this program on the TV, and we have a program on WCLK 91.9, which is also focused on cancer and its impact in the community. And we do that every month. We host health fairs where we provide free screening for not just for prostate cancer, but for other. Actually, Mr. Dortch has been financially supporting us in that. We also go to churches, to libraries, to anywhere where actually we can communicate with the community about early detection. I think that what's important about this disease is that if you catch it early, the cure rate is almost 100%.
So detection screenings are critical.
Yes, so that is what we try to go and have a conversation with the men and families in the community.
Dr. Brown, I'm sure as president of Clark Atlanta University, it brings you much joy and pride to know that this critical resource is housed here. Why do you think it's so important that Clark Atlanta have a voice in the conversation?
Well, as you know, Clark Atlanta University is an independent institution grown in this community, servicing the entire African American community. and has long seen itself as a focal point for the research and the scholarship that is critical to that community worldwide. And so it only makes sense that such a center be located here. And in fact, the growth factors that Dr. Khan has so beautifully engineered over the last several years have been a direct consequence of the decision to focus on prostate cancer. It has fueled the cohesiveness of our research. It has drawn, with his charisma and his research, has drawn other researchers to this space from all of the best places. So we've got postdocs and faculty that have come out of Berkeley, University of California, Harvard, and all the places where the big research is done, and now we're developing that big research. I should also say that it's also critically important because the nature of our outreach here enables us to expand enormously. So the Retired NFL Players Association is a part of our team, and of course many of them are right here, and so there's a ready audience for that. That then led to the involvement of our football team in the outreach. And so every year we're graduating young men for whom this is not a foreign set of things, who understand exactly what it's all about and who will continue to carry that word and live that word inside their lives. So it's important for us for all of those reasons, but also because the Center for Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development is the lead research organization at the university. So in addition to building this center up to its current status, and soon will be easily known as the biggest in the world, the biggest and the best in the world on this disease, it has also helped us design the model by which we are building our other centers, such as our Nanoscale Materials Center and our Innovation Lab and several other entities.
So the CCRTD serves as a benchmark, if you will.
A benchmark and a pathway.
That's pretty impressive, Dr. Khan.
And that was what we talked about from the very beginning. When I looked at what we were trying to do and what he had already begun, I said, you know, we've got to understand that at every step of the way, you're my experiment. So he is my laboratory. So his laboratory is my laboratory, and that's how we have built this, and it's created a great path for the others to follow.
Again, impressive, and it's an honor to know that Life Notes can be a part of the CCRTD's outreach and community service. Now, we were talking earlier about the great debate about cancer screenings. Why, and I'll pose this to you, Mr. Dortch, why do you think that great debate exists, and what can we do to eradicate that?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, I'm here and healthy after 8 years as an 8-year survivor from prostate cancer because of screening. 20 years ago, when I was the national chair of 100 Black Men of America, I had just come into office, and there was this major debate. This was in 1995, and the debate was whether or not we should do the screenings, and it was all over the place. And so the 100 Black Men of America, under my leadership, we convened in Houston, Texas, a group of about 120 African-American doctors. We had the National Institute of Health, we had the Department of Defense, we had the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to join us, along with many of our doctors in the organization, to really have the great debate on prostate cancer, to talk about it. But more importantly, we created what was the Prostate Cancer Coalition. That was 20 years ago, 1995. And for most of the African-American doctors, though, they were all on point with screening. And even back then, it was from age 45 on, you should be screened for prostate cancer. I started at age 45. Thank God, on this past Sunday, I celebrated my 65th birthday, April 12th. But I started at age 45, and every year I got my complete exam. We started doing prostate screenings around the country through the 100 Black Men. In Omaha, Nebraska, for example, we did a screening. 77 African-American men came, 35 had prostate cancer. It was mind-blowing. And even here in Atlanta, the 100 decided at Morehouse School of Medicine, we would do a prostate cancer screening at one of our membership meetings, and all of the presidents and past presidents agreed, and officers, that we would all go first. I had one member who's a medical doctor. Sometimes medical doctors are the biggest culprits of not looking after their health. And he was complaining, but he went through. He discovered he had prostate cancer. We had 3 members that discovered they had prostate cancer that night. I discovered I had prostate cancer during my regular year exam, and thank God to another Panther. I got my master's degree from Clark Atlanta University. Dr. James Bennett treated me, and 8 years later I'm here to talk about it. But again, at the end of the day, there's I think a wide chasm between how white men look at prostate cancer and then how African American men and men of color look at prostate cancer. And in most of the research done, thank God we got Clark Atlanta University here, and we look for what the center's doing here now. They don't always keep us in the mix when they begin to look at how we're going to treat prostate cancer when we're the #1 victims in the world. And so that said, screening has worked for me. They have new, at the time it was colorectal screening. They now can draw your blood and can detect, but we are right on the cutting edge of what's going to happen to save so many lives here at Clark Atlanta University. And it's going to make a difference, not just here, but around the world. The other thing is getting people to talk about it. Right after I'd had my treatment, I spoke at the Carter Center here. And I talked about the fact that I was a survivor, and I was in great company, because in that room was Reverend Joseph Lowry. Ambassador Andrew Young was in that room, both prostate cancer survivors. But I talked about it, and I talked about the fact that men should get screened. Immediately after I spoke that day, I had 7 men to come up to me, ask me what were the symptoms and all. I shared with them, but my main thing was, you should go get checked. Can you imagine that 2 of those 7 men had prostate cancer? We have to talk about it, but if detected early, it can be treated. I mean, when they discovered I had it, it was in such an early state, the doctor said this time next year we'll not have progressed anymore, because it can be a slow processing type of cancer. But I said, Doc, if we know what we know, let's do what we have to do. Yeah. And I had the seed implant, and here I am to talk about it.
Well, let me piggyback off of that whole notion about it's not as widely talked about as it should be. I like to say knowledge is power, but it's only power if you use it. So why do you think that this is such a sensitive topic in the African American male community? Culture. Dr. Brown, could you address that?
Well, it's there's a lot of fear and mythology in the African American community. First, about medicine, period, and certainly about any medicine remotely connected to reproductive cells. And so there is this tremendous fear that somehow the man that I will cease to be. And not realizing that, first of all, that's not a foregone conclusion. And secondly, that there are some more important aspects of life than your sexuality. So we've got these mythologies that we live on and that we continue to try to dispel. The best way to dispel those mythologies is really through the young at this point, which is why I'm so pleased about another characteristic of the Cancer Center is we have students at every level of our enterprise engaged in the research there, from freshmen on up through PhD and postdocs. And so again, wherever they go, there's a clear set of messages and understandings that they carry with them, and all of our students that are involved in the outreach and the community service. So one of the other uniquenesses that you have to look at for our kind of institution is, yes, we're about the basic research, but we're about much, much more than that. It is about the basic education and how widely we spread it. Another thing about Dr. Khan is I used to try to keep him from teaching freshman biology, so he'd focus. Every time I turned around, he was back in the freshman biology class. And what I realized was that this is where the stuff gets opened up, and he could not do that. So when you say, back to your initial question, why Clark Atlanta University? This is why. This is not how it happens almost anywhere else. So we're spreading the word in those ways, and that's how we will begin to dispel that mythology and involvement with families. Because ultimately, a person's spouse and their children have to really come into play when there is fear to move things forward.
Certainly, and Dr. Khan, he teaches and he instructs from a holistic perspective.
Yes, he does.
And when you approach this topic, it certainly has to be approached from a holistic perspective.
Well, I think that when I came here, I will be very honest, I had no experience of working in the community. We were never trained to do that. Not only that, but that was my first interaction with the African American community. But when you look at the problem, you say, okay, why is that mortality rate so high, or why is the incidence rate so high? You can think of genetics, you can think of biology, you can think of many things, but you also think that it's also because people are not going to the doctor. So if you want to attack the problem, you cannot just leave that big out of that. Right. So that's why we started this, and we're happy that we actually have a very dynamic community outreach program.
Very much so. Very much so.
And we'll have the pleasure of talking with some of your students and faculty member more about not only the outreach, but the work that's done inside the laboratories. So that's going to be our next episode. Mr. Dortch, I'm sorry. We were talking about the signs and the symptoms. There are men watching today that are wondering, oh, am I at risk? You know, do I have these signs and symptoms? Can you share some of the things you
and
experienced?
sometimes it may not even manifest itself, but if it's continuously getting up in the middle of the night, having to go urinate, that's one to think about. It's one of the early signs that people need to have checked. There could be a prostate disorder. Doesn't necessarily mean you have prostate cancer, but that's important. If they have a tough time trying to urinate and all, that could be a sign, or it could be a sign of some other problems with the prostate. The thing, again, with this whole issue on prostate cancer, the best way in my mind to make sure you don't have it is to make sure you have an annual physical regimen every year. We take care of our cars, major appliances, more than we take care of these wonderful things called a body. God has blessed us with these, and there's no other machine like the body. And so they have to get, you know, a program that you go in at the first of the year. I do everything from going in and having a complete physical. Every 5 years, I go and of course make sure that when my colon is working properly. I go every year for my prostate cancer exam. And by the way, I said earlier, at age 45, they're discovering prostate cancer in young African-American men in their early 30s now. Yeah. And so, but there are some things we can do to prevent that too. We have a good diet and ensure that we eat the right foods, and we have an exercise program. It won't guarantee you won't have prostate cancer, but sure can minimize. And then the one thing that we don't do enough is avoid stress. Now, stress breaks down the body's defense system. See, I talk about prostate cancer. 26 years ago, July 3rd, I defeated one of the most deadliest cancers ever known, adenocarcinoma of the small intestine. It's a 92% mortality rate. I'm in the 8% of those who ever survived it. And again, the doctor said avoid stress, but it was discovered because up until that time, for 17 consecutive years, I went into the doctor to get a complete physical. And when things started to happen, I didn't use that old voodoo approach. When I started having a little pain in my side, I had insurance. I went to see the doctors. Yeah. Instead of listening to the elders and say, oh, that's probably an early state of ulcer, doing self-diagnosis, or the other thing I was saying when you ask culture. It's almost like I don't want to know as if it's going to go away. Yeah. And the body is a machine that gives you warning systems. If you're driving a car and the light comes on, it says, check the engine, or it says you need oil. Well, the body itself has a self-check mechanism that sends you a note, you need to do something. And so with that, but I think the frequent urination in the middle of the night is one of the most common signs that you will get in terms of this whole issue on prostate cancer.
Well, let me re-emphasize the point you made, and that is that you may not have any symptoms.
Right.
Because sometimes when you have symptoms, it may be too late.
Yeah.
So having symptoms, it's not like other diseases that you have symptom and then you go and get cured. No, you don't want to wait for symptoms. So
Right. Get those
Symptoms
tests.
can be a
Right.
bad sign.
yeah, symptoms
Right.
can be a bad sign.
Yeah,
Yes.
could mean if you'd had that checkup last year,
Yeah.
you might not be showing these symptoms now because
Right.
it would have been uncovered last year.
And I've known people when they discovered they had it, it was too late. There's nothing they could see. Once it spreads to the other parts of the body,
Yeah.
there's
Metastasized.
little you can do.
And I think that the majority of African American patients who die of prostate cancer, they die because they're discovered too late. And the statistics in Georgia is horrible. 64% of African Americans who are diagnosed, they die. But I told you that none of it's supposed to
Right.
die if you catch it
Right.
early.
Right.
Right.
And you'd be amazed at how many men are walking around today who are survivors. And I keep telling them, you need to talk about it. You need to share it so people will know. And then there are so many options for treatment. I went in the morning at 6:30 a.m. I walked out at 11 a.m. for my treatment for prostate cancer. And you know, again, I chose option to do the seed implant. But there are multiple options. People think, okay, if I go in there and they discover it, then I won't have a quality of life. There are so many advancements that have been made right now, but if you detect it early, you can live a normal life. And for those men who are worried about their macho sex life, I mean, really, if you have your plan, it won't impact your life and your quality of life. The key is early detection, treatment, and then doing a lot of things that can help you just from a regular routine of exercise, diet, and again, avoiding those stressful situations every day, because stress is a monster. It really
It in of itself is a
it
killer.
can impact
That's
you in
right.
any way.
That's right.
And that's where the center comes in. You provide cancer screenings in the community, so our African American men can come and get tested so that they can
Yes.
find out
As
if
I
in
said,
fact
we
they have
do
cancer.
we do have a community relations, of course, and every year in October, we organize a free screening event with the English Avenue Wine City Ministerial Alliance, and we actually host it at one of the churches in the community, and we screen about 200 people during that day, but not just for prostate, but for a whole lot of other medical.
Dr. Khan, I'm just really impressed with the center and the outreach and the education. And Dr. Brown, certainly thank you for your leadership at Clark Atlanta University and helping with Dr. Khan fulfill this vision, not just for Clark Atlanta and Atlanta, but the national and international cancer communities. And Mr. Dortch, thank you for sharing your story, your testimony of survival. And yes, there is life after prostate cancer,
yes.
a very fruitful life after prostate cancer. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Life Notes. We'll be back next time with more information about the CCRTD, their community outreach, and we'll take a look in the laboratories to see the new and exciting things that are going on at the Center for Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development.
CAU-TV, educating and entertaining since 1982.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're gonna beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
Up your head. What you doing?
I'm not gonna lie, definitely not easy.
Hey, whoa, 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 whoa.
Just gotta get through today.
How do you stop it?
Being used to doing something with a cigarette makes it hard doing it without one. If I can relearn to get through my workday without cigarettes, I can relearn anything without cigarettes.
Relearn life without cigarettes. Free at becomeanx.org. A new way to think about quitting.
It's time to join forces. Get energized and fuel up right. Because starting today, every kid in America has a mission. Bring out the action hero in you. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
Any questions?
What kind of service plan does this come with?
Unlimited.
Can I keep my same phone number?
Absolutely.
How do I change the ringtone?
Just hook it up to your computer.
Does it have a camera? What's the warranty? Does it come in silver? Can I put my party shuffle on this? Does it have a 3.5 millimeter headset jack? You sell a lot of these?
It's the one I carry.
You ever get those phantom vibrations in your pocket?
Any questions?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Ask questions. For the 10 questions everyone should know, go to ahrq.gov.
There's a monster in my bathtub. There's one on the couch. There's a monster on my bed.
Keep innocent things from triggering an asthma attack.
Please make the monsters go away.
Learn how to stop their asthma attacks at noattacks.org.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today. Learn how at ready.gov.
This can't be happening. This can't be happening.
Of course it's not happening. Armored car. Listen, having money isn't about luck. Make your own coffee, save $1,000 a year. Feed me.
Feed the pig.